Good day. My name is Andrew Schaefer, and I'd like to review with you the report pack provided by Trafalgar to residential and commercial clients outlining the performance of their buildings. Let's work through this example, which is for a Trafalgar building, thereby avoiding any confidentiality issues. Firstly, it's important just to focus on the heading, just to check which building is being reported, and this is the financial reports for the period ending the last day of September 2019, and it would apply to the financial year to date of this particular building. The covering letter gives a description and an index of the reports that are contained in this particular report pack. So each report component is actually listed here. There's a short description of the information that's available in each report. And important to note that this report pack can be customized to individual owner requirements. And if this is too detailed, some of these reports can be dropped, and a slimmed down or an abbreviated report pack can certainly be available and provided. And in that case, the index would be shortened and only the reports which were included would be mapped out here. Moving to the next page, we can see the index mapped to page numbers of the different reports in this particular pack. The first report in the pack is what we call the rent roll. Again, please always check the heading and make sure that the building name and the financial period is confirmed. In this case, we see it is North Vista for the month of September, reported at the 30th of September. That context is very important to confirm initially. Also, just note the contact details for any queries, and certainly the portfolio manager or account administrator would be the key contacts for any initial queries or action items. The rent roll really breaks down unit by unit, any balances brought forward on the rental account, the standard charges which are raised. You can see here it's water and basic rental with a total. Account adjustments would typically be interest on arrears. We can see the receipts that are actually processed on this particular rental account, and a balance carried forward, in this case a credit. So unit by unit for the whole building, we see the breakdown of these charges and payments. Useful to look at the totals at the end. We can see here 60,315 Rand of rental receipts have been processed and allocated to this building. There is arrear rentals of 4,904 carried forward, so those arrears would be targeted by the debt collector. There's a breakdown here of the total charges and how they're made up. So basic rental of that total there, 43,000, and totals of other amounts that are raised on the rental accounts. And we can see the similar breakdown of the totaled adjustments to the accounts. The flags over here really just categorize the different tenants into different groupings which have different debt collection or operational treatments. So for example, new tenants, units that are vacant or have been given notice to vacate, and there's some other flags as well. I won't go into too much detail. So that is the rent roll. The next report in the pack is called a surplus report or a disbursement statement, and this really is the trust account bank statement for the building. Please once again look at the heading, just confirm the building name, the time period concerned, and we see here it's the trust account statement for September for this particular building. There was a closing balance at the end of the month before, so August, of 967 Rand 41. This is the rental income actually receipted to the building of 56,000. That would tie into the rent roll total that was reflected. Each creditor payment would be listed here to see all the expenses that have been processed for and allocated to this building. The creditors total is totaled up here because it's the total of all creditors paid through the creditors module, but the very next report is a breakdown in the creditors roll, which I'll discuss next. There's some bank charges, and then over here we can see there's a shortfall on the trust account of 9,902 Rand and 9 cents. This surplus report also serves as an invoice for the collection commission to Trafalgar. There were some photocopies, and we can see the invoice number for SARS compliant purposes. So this is the surplus report, also known as the disbursement statement. Clicking through to the next page, this is actually the creditors roll. These are all creditors paid through the creditors module, and the total payment is reflected as a single line item on the surplus report. Here we can see each individual creditor, if there was a balance brought forward, all the invoice numbers that have been processed during this particular month, a description of the invoice component, the GLs to which the expenses have been allocated. We can see the invoice dates and the amounts of the invoice. And over here is the payment information of what invoice payment has been made at what particular date, and confirming what the carried forward balance is, i.e. have the creditors been paid in full and up to date. And the totals are at the bottom. And this allocation summary is quite useful to see what the totals are allocated to individual GLs as a combined value. Moving forward from the surplus report, we get to what we call the tenancy schedule. The tenancy schedule really gives the profile of units in the building. It's grouped by floor, and let's look at an example to explain it further. So over here we see on the first floor, we have unit number 1. It's also got door number 1 painted on the door. Some buildings don't have the same door number as the unit number on the plans. We have the size of the unit listed there as 58 square meters. It's a 1-bedroom unit. It's occupied by Mrs. P. Sabando. The rental charge is 4,000 Rand. There's a water recovery of 500 Rand. So the total monthly charges are 4,500. If there was a fixed term lease, the start date, expiry date, and a renewal review date would be loaded here, and that would then be managed by the portfolio administrator on the account. So group floor by floor is a profile breakdown of each unit, and this is quite useful to check on rental renewal dates, lease terms, breakdown of charges, and the sizes and the type of units in the building concerned. So that is the tenancy schedule. The next report in the pack, we have the income statement. We call this a multi-columnar format, whereby we have each month of the financial year to date mapped out side by side. That is quite useful because it's easy to then spot trends. Are the values reasonably consistent month to month? Are there any gaps in terms of income or expenses, which might indicate exceptions that need to be identified and managed? Are there trends? And are there any issues that arise from looking at it in that manner? Quite useful to see the year-to-date total, how that compares to the year-to-date budget, and the variances are very important to focus on and understand and certainly manage material variances, and that's really the way in which the budget would be achieved and certainly consistent improvement promoted across the building. So the income statement is mapped out in income and expense categories. Hopefully it's reasonably self-explanatory. Obviously one would look quite carefully at the bottom line, which would be really the surplus or the shortfall, and how that compares to the budget, and looking at is the performance improving or deteriorating through the financial year. There's some useful ratios at the end in terms of utility recoveries, expense ratios, and ratios for maintenance, staffing, and profit margins. These ratios can be discussed with the portfolio manager. There's certain best practices which are worth understanding and discussing, but at the end of the day, continuous improvement is a useful objective, and improving these ratios or optimizing them would be very important for improving performance consistently in the building. The final report in this pack is really what we call the Arrears Report. This really shows rental arrears and the notepads entries that are made by the debt collector of what is being done to target these arrears, to collect the rentals, and to bring it up to date. So if we look at Unit 4, also door 4, we have the tenant's name. We can see that there's arrears which are less than 30 days aged. So there's arrears in the current period. And this particular debt collector has said there has been a promise to pay, which has been provided, obviously on a call to the debtor, of the amount of 2,900 Rand expected on the 24th of October. So the debt collector should diarise on the next day, the 25th, to follow up to check if the amount has been paid and that promise to pay has been honoured, and hopefully that would improve the arrear position. So unit by unit, arrears by arrears, it's broken down into different age categories. It's got the last 3 months debt collector notes to see what is being done about it, and important to check that the debt collectors are on top of it and are making progress in terms of collecting arrear rentals. That concludes the monthly reporting packs. I hope the explanation has been useful. Once again, this is reported normally mid-month for the prior month after checking by the accountant. Any queries or action items should be referred to the portfolio manager, and I would strongly recommend owners spend at least 30 minutes reviewing these reports every month to make sure they're fully aware of all performance details of their buildings and that they are following up and consistently achieving continuous improvement and resolving any variances as reflected in the reports. Thank you very much indeed.